for now, you have seen that the instructions you write in a Python program will be executed one by one, and every instruction will be executed. But as you progress, you will want to make your program more dynamic and also be able to execute only some of the instructions depending on some specific conditions. For example, you might do a certain action if a button is pressed, and if the button is not pressed, you will do another action, which means that some of the instructions will be executed, some of them won't be executed. So let's write our first condition in Python. I'm first going to create temperature variable. Okay, let's give it 21 degrees. I'm going to talk in Celsius degrees here, but it doesn't really matter. So I'm going to use integers, okay, for the temperature variable. And to test something, so to use a condition, you are going to use the keyword if. Okay, you can see the keyword if with the color here. And if what? If conditions, so the conditional statement, let's say temperature is greater than 20. So we are going to test a variable, okay, inside the if. And this is the condition statement that we are testing. With this symbol, it means greater than. So if the temperature is greater than 20, then I add a colon, I go to the new line, and as you can see, we have a new indentation. So what does it mean? It means that if this condition is true, then that code here, that block of code will be executed. So let's just add one instruction here. Let's say print warm. So let's say just it's warm here. It's warm. Okay, and then I'm going to just run that code. So I'm going to save it, conditions. Okay, and as you can see, we have the result, it's warm. Okay, we have that result because here the temperature is 21. Okay, so when we arrive in the line 3 of the program here, the temperature variable will be evaluated to 21. So if 21 is greater than 20, okay, so is 21 greater than 20? Yes. So we execute that block of code. Now let's say temperature is now 19. Let's run the script again, and as you can see, we don't have anything here printed here. And here, let's say I add a new instructions, but here I go back one indentation and I add another print, let's say end of program, just make it simple, and I run it. You can see we still have the end of program. So the if here, the if statement will only affect the following indented block of code. Okay, that is just something else. So you can see that first block of code, okay, which will be executed. We create a variable temperature, then we test the variable temperature. As you can see, it's on the same here, same indentation. If this is true, we go to that block of code, and when that block of code is finished, we come back to the previous indentation and we continue to execute all of the commands. Okay, so that's why you can see that even if here we don't enter that block of code because the condition is false, we still execute everything that is after. But now if let's say I indent that line and let's run again, you can see we don't have anything here because this is now part of the block of code inside the if statement. So I'm going to put it back there, and let's put 30. If I put 30, we will have it's warm, and then we will have end of program. Okay, so it's always executed in the order. Okay, and with the if, it's just that some parts of the code may be executed or may not be executed depending on the condition here. Okay, so we have our if here, if block of code. What we can add now also is else. Okay, and you can see we have the color here for else. So else and a colon, and then you go back to new line and you indent also the block of code. And let's say print not so warm. Okay, so what does that mean? We test if the temperature is greater than 20. Okay, if this is the case, we enter that block of code, and else, so if it is not the case, we enter that block of code. So the if-else structure is really useful when you want to test a condition and when you want to execute something if it is true and something else if it is false. Okay, so let's run the program again. You can see we have it's warm, okay, because that condition is true. So we enter that block of code. Now if I put 9 degrees, you can see not so warm, and we still have the end of program. So what happened here is that first we set the temperature variable with the value 9, then we arrive at this if, and we test if the temperature is greater than 20. This is not the case, so we don't go inside that block of code. Instead, we go inside the else block of code and we execute that instructions here. And of course, you can add many different instructions. Just keep the same indentation and it will be in the same block of code. And finally, to make things a little bit more complete, we can also add else if. Okay, and in Python, you can use elif. And let's make an example so you can understand. I'm going to do temperature greater than 10. Let's say print. So temperature between 11 and 20. Elif temperature greater than 0 and print temperature between 1 and 10. And else, let's say it is freezing cold. So what did I do here? I have added multiple else if statements here. So basically all of that is one structure, okay? And you first enter the structure with the first if, and you test if that is true, then you execute that. And after that, you go out of that structure. So you go back to line 11. If that is not true, then you go to the next line, the next elif line, and you check the condition. So if the condition is true, you will execute that block of code here. And once you have executed that block of code, you go out of the structure. Okay, so basically you test the conditions, and whenever you have something that is true, it will execute the following indented block of code. So if I run the program here, you can see temperature between 1 and 10, okay, which means that this test has failed, okay. So we go to the next one. This test has failed, okay, because 9 is not greater than 10. And then we go to that test here. Is 9 greater than 0? Yes. So we enter that block of code and then we exit. So let's try with, let's say, -6. You can see it is freezing cold. So we have checked all of the different tests and none of them passed. So we are going to the else block. And one more thing here, the order of the different tests is very important, because the first test that will be evaluated to true will be accepted and the first block of code will then be executed and not the following ones. Okay, so let's say I use 0 here and 20 here, and I am putting, let's say, 35 degrees. okay, as you can see, we still go into that first block of code, not that one, okay? Because here, that is true. The temperature is greater than 20, okay? 35 is greater than 20. But if you look at the way the program is executed, if we go there, so is temperature greater than 0? Yes. So we do that block of code and then we exit the structure. And as soon as we have accepted one condition here, all of the rest won't be executed. Okay, so make sure that when you do a condition like that, you pay attention to the order of the tests, okay? Because like in that case, this test will always be true when that one is true and when that one is true, which means that those two blocks of code will never be executed with that specific order, okay? Now, if I go back here, there is a chance for every block of code to be executed.